All right, what's up everybody? Welcome back to episode 3 with the Hanchard SPL Roadster. And I got the chassis back, or the bare frame back, from the sandblaster. Well, there was a little bit more corrosion issues that I'm not really happy with. The cross member's a little bit rougher than I thought it was. The front cross tube's a little bit rougher. The horns are gonna need replaced. And then in the rails in the back, just where some salt had gotten into the tubes, I don't really feel comfortable kind of patching all that stuff back together, and I'm gonna have an issue with corrosion later on. So unfortunately, even though I spent the time to try to take everything apart and save the frame to keep the originality and all that stuff, I think I'm just gonna have to suck it up and build new rails. So I'm kind of internally torn with that because, like I said in the previous videos, I wanted to keep the frame. That way it was more of the original car that would be still around and connected to the history of it. But at this point, with a safety aspect and dealing with corrosion later on, I think it's just going to be a better option. So with that being said, I am going to change a few little things. Instead of miter cutting it and stepping the frame up to accomplish what is already done, I think I'm just going to bend it on the manual bender just to make life so much faster and so much easier, especially since they're not going to be the original rails. So that's kind of what's going to have to happen next. So I'm going to move this frame out of the way. I'm going to bring in our frame table and get it set up to where I can start to plan for building new rails to get the car moving forward. Again, I'm not super happy about it, but I think that's the best plan moving forward to deal with the extra corrosion I found after blasting and just make sure things are solid and safe for the future. So let me dig the frame table out and we will get this moving forward. All right, so I got the frame table all moved into place. I got everything leveled up and ready to roll. So I'm gonna show you kind of the levels and the digital protractor. This can be kind of up to what you want. I like to aim small and miss small, so I get everything zeroed completely out with the digital angle finder. If you just want to use a bubble, like on a standard bubble level, that's fine too, but my thought is if I zero everything completely out and then I continue to work to a 0 point, everything should be pretty on point. Even on a bubble level, if it looks good to you, you can throw digital protractor on there, and it can be, anywhere from 0.15 up to a couple degrees off, and it still look okay in the bubble. So for me, it's just good habit and good practice to work to get everything completely set at 0.00 and work forward from there so I can ensure everything is as close to level, plumb, and square as possible. So let me kind of show you how I set all that stuff up. All right, you could see when I kind of came around initially and I measured which was our high and our low with a level, just so I could figure out which end or which corner was going to be higher, and I start with that point. That way I don't start with the lowest and get it level and come back to the highest and still need to come back up and have to keep going around and around. So I always start with leveling everything up on the highest corner, and you can see we're here at what will be the front, and we're at 0, 0, 0. Let me grab this, and we'll check our side. So there, at what would be the driver's side, is 0, 0, 0. And the passenger side, 0, 0, 0. And we'll check our back. And the back is also 0, 0, 0. So everything's nice and level, and the table is square. So from here we can get some offset risers up to lay our frame rails on as we build them, get those level, and we'll put our string line on and we can start laying the frame out. All right, so I went ahead and just did some initial measurements here to get the profile of the new frame rail drawn out. So our rear tires are going to be 28-inch diameter Goodyear Eagle Land Speed tires. The front is going to be 23-inch diameter Goodyear Eagle Land Speed tires. I know, that's the total diameter, and I'm going to run approximately a 9 to 10 inch ground clearance. That'll be adjustable a little bit with coilovers in the back and different holes in the coilover mounts, as well as we can adjust the front end a little bit by changing the spring pack. I am going to lower the front just a touch. I'm going to put a flat cross member in it instead of the completely stock cross member, just to get it down out of the air a little bit more. So I start off with our 103.5-inch stock wheelbase. So by the rule book, we are allowed to extend that cross member forward 3 inches. So I measured out the wheelbase on the Roadster, and it was right around 105.5 to 106. It just depends on if there was any angle on the coilovers or if they were perfectly vertical. So to me, that's close enough. So I just went ahead and went to 106.5 to get us our 3 inches over stock, which is allowed in this class. So from there, I set up what our wheelbase was going to be, and I want roughly 4 inches in between the axle and the bottom of the frame. So I know that point, and I measured from the center line of the axle on the body to where I'm approximately going to put our rear cage mount. So I don't want the kick up to be in the middle of that. So that gives me 17 3/4. And then the back, I want it extended about 18.5, and then a 2-inch offset. So the bottom of the rail will be 2 inches higher at the back than it is at the main underbody or front of the rear end kick-up. And that's just really because it doesn't need to come down, and it'll just be in the trunk area. So I've got all this stuff laid out. Then I can go up and design that in CAD. So this is all the information I need, and I went ahead and did that just due to the fact that I'm not going to film it, because if you've ever tried to video working on a computer, the glare is terrible, and I just don't like it, and I'm not smart enough to know how to screenshot video while I'm working on it. So maybe in the future I'll get around to figuring that part out, but to save time, I just went ahead, went up, drew all of this up in AutoCAD to these dimensions, transferred that to BendTech to get my 3D bend profile, and that's what we have here is our bend worksheet that tells us where bend 1 is located and where bend 2 is located, starting at the rear of the rail and the angle it gets bent to. So next up, I'm going to head over to the horizontal bandsaw. I'm going to get some 2x4 by 120 wall rectangular tube loaded up in the saw, get it cut to this 129.39 inch in length, get everything cleaned up, deburred, and ready to bend some fresh rails. So I went ahead and bent up the new frame rails. I didn't really video that because I think you guys are getting sick of seeing a bunch of frame rail bending segments. So if you're curious how I bent the frame rails, check out the rest of the channel. I've got a whole series on different frame rails that I've bent up. So I kind of skipped that on this one, but I've got them all set up on the fixture here. Made these little risers that come up to raise the frame off of the table itself so I can work underneath of it if need be, and put our drop down brackets for suspension, get everything hung, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I just would have put the rails directly on top of the table. So made the risers, got everything lifted up. They're all level and square to one another and to the table. So we've still got an elevated building platform. Then laid the rails out, based it off a string line, got everything centered, and then squared up. So currently, they're pretty much dead on. I would say they're within a 64th of square, if not pretty much perfect. So then the rails are tacked to the risers, and that holds everything in the location where I want them. And made one of our 100% flat cross members. I just get these lasered out and then I fold them up. So got that bent up and it's tacked in. And I went ahead and set the cross member to 10 degrees for caster, because with it being a land speed car, you want it to go nice and straight for long distances. So I add a little bit more caster. So got it tacked into place. Next, I have to go up to the bridge port, and we're going to take our 2-inch rear tube for the rear coilover upper mount bracket tube that goes across. I have to chuck it up in the bridge port, and then I can drill the holes for the sleeves that'll go in there to attach the top of the coilover to. So that's next. I already cut the tube to length. So we're going to find center on that, then locate the distance I want our upper coilover mounts to be at, and then we'll drill those in the bridge port out to a 1-inch diameter so we can sleeve that, and it'll be a nice finished part, and that'll all be TIG welded, and then we can go ahead and get that put in the chassis as well. I was also able to get all the old brackets and tabs and stuff cut off of the 8-inch rear end for the car. Got all that stuff sanded, smoothed down, finished out an 80 grit. That way when I go to put the new brackets on, it'll make things so much easier to have a nice, clean, smooth finish to start with. So got that done, and we'll head back to the car and show you some of the progress back there. As you can see, I got the majority of the frame tacked together. I got our front cross member in, the rear cross member in with the coilover mount bosses welded into place, the ones that we machined up on the bridge port. So now I want to take the body and set it on the frame and get a little bit of a test fit. So it's set up on its nose right here in front of the chassis and the table, just off screen. One thing I did do that I wanted to note is in the drawing, I left the rear tail of the frame rails a little long because I wasn't sure how I wanted to handle that yet. So I kind of did some measuring off of the body, and I went ahead and trimmed those down just to give it a little bit more room with the body going on. So let's throw the body on here, check out the fit, and then I got our first batch of parts in for the Hanchard Roadster. So between putting the body on and checking parts, I think so far we're making some decent headway. So the body is set into place roughly. So I want to be able to hang the rear end in place so I can make sure that I get everything centered where I want in the wheel well. But overall, just on the initial setting in place of the body, everything looks pretty nice. Everything seems like it's going to fit well, flow well. So really happy for our initial fit up of the body here. And let's check out some of the parts I've got made and that came in for the car. So one of the first parts that I made were these little angled threaded pieces, and they will weld here onto the front cross member for our radiator mount. And I took some 1/2-inch steel plate, fixtured it up in the bridge port at 10 degrees to match what I set the cross member angle at. So then I drilled and tapped for a 3/8 bolt, and those will be welded here in place once I get everything located exactly where I want it. And then when we put our aluminum radiator in place, I can drill into the radiator foot and bolt down through that, or I can put a stud. Most likely I'll put a stud threaded into this, the angled plate there, facing up, and then I can put a washer with a spring and a nylock nut just to give it a little bit of flex and play. So I got those made, and I have to get those located where I want and welded on, and then these pieces will be good to go. Also got in the rear lower coilover mounts for the rear end. I got these from Welder Series out of Canada. They're just really affordable, nice parts, and I like the extra thick boss on the back to support the coilovers. So got these in. And one of the other parts that I made is I'm going to keep the cage a bolt-in style cage so we can take everything apart. And one thing I worry about is what happens if where our bolt holes are, they land on top of the frame rail. And then you can't get a nut on the bottom of it, and the frame rail is only 120 wall, so I don't want to trust those threads, or lack thereof, to hold the cage on. So what I did is, per the rule book, I made our landing pad, which is 5 inches by 6 inches, and it's 1/2-inch 1018 mild steel, and I laid out our bolt pattern, drilled them, and tapped them. And then what I'll do is I want to keep the top of the frame rail completely flat. So when I locate where I want our roll cage to land, I will notch out the top of the frame, recess these plates in so they're nice and flat across the top, and then I'll TIG weld them all the way around. So I'm sure a lot of you guys will be like, but that'll make a stress riser. Technically, yes, it could make a stress riser, but it'll be the opposite way. So the weight will be pushing downward on the top of the frame, and it will compress it, not really try to tear it open as much as if the pocket was on the bottom of the frame. So technically it could be a stress riser, but we're going to be self-contained inside the roll cage, not really using the frame itself to protect us from the bottom. So in the unlikely event of an accident, I feel confident that it would be safe, because I don't see that stress riser being an issue. But if it is, we will still be contained inside the roll cage itself and still be protected. So you can think what you want on if it's the right way or wrong way, but I would much rather drill and tap into that plate and have that molded or welded into the frame, flush across the top for a smooth mounting surface for the floor. And that's kind of the reason I did that. So that's just the way I'm doing it. You wouldn't have to do it that way on your own project. It's just the way I chose to do it. So let's open up some of these boxes from Speedway Motors and see some of the parts that started coming in today for the Hanchard Special. I've been ordering a whole lot of parts through Speedway and a couple other vendors for this car, as well as the Rouster Roadster that is here in front of me. So I'm not 100% sure which all parts are going to be in these boxes. So we'll kind of have to check and see. So we have a new kingpin kit. So new bushings, kingpins, bearings, all of that stuff. And we have a standard plain spring perch. Motor mount kit. Coilover mount bolts. And we have some forged shock mounts, like the F100 style shock mounts here. So these will be our upper shock mounts. And I'll walk over to the car here in a minute, but these will be our upper shocks for the front. and I will make a weld-in boss that goes into the frame so it's nice and solid where it connects to the frame. And we have our Willwood front hubs. So instead of machining a set of Ford hubs for the different bolt pattern to reuse the same wheels, I just went ahead and ordered new Willwood billet machined hubs for the front. That way it's just very simple, put everything on, and we've got new hubs, new bearings, and the bolt pattern's the same with no machining work on my end. So we have that. And then in this box, these should be our new front shocks. At least to me, they look like some boxes that shocks would come in. Yep, and then, so these will be our new front shocks. I've used these on a couple projects and I've really liked them. So just QA1 adjustable front shocks. So I've got 2 of these. I think that's what's in this box here. So got all of this stuff. Going to get it cleaned up a little bit just so it's not a mess on our work table here, and I will show you how I want to mount these front shocks, and I think that'll wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you like seeing the Hanchard Special come back to life. I know there's a little bit of stuff missing with the machining on the roll cage mount pads and a few other small parts, but it was the holidays and I had some electrical problems in the shop. So between everything else going on, I really didn't get all the footage, but I figured I could take the time to explain what I was doing instead of just a time lapse of running the mill. So hopefully you guys are liking the progress, and if you're following along on the channel, you know that I'm a glutton for punishment between the Hanchard Special and tearing back into the Rouster Roadster for the LS, as well as maintenance on the modified Roadster, working on the F100, starting back on the Streamliner, plus all the other projects I have going on in the shop, and the air ride trailer, or the trailer that broke the internet. So I have been making progress on the trailer as well, and I plan to do a follow-up video on the progress that's been made on it. The reason I haven't really done many more videos on it is I swear this project is cursed. Every time I would set the camera up to work on it and review the footage at the end of the day, it would say that all the footage was corrupt and the memory card was corrupt. Even using a different memory card, different camera, I would always have the same result. So I'm sure it was user error, but I was just saying it was cursed. Made more sense, and it kind of irritated me to where I wasn't filming as much on it as I should have. So what I'm going to do to get you guys caught up on the trailer that broke the internet is I'm just going to do a once over and show you how things are coming together on it, how everything kind of played out, and what the next steps are from here. So enough babbling about the trailer and other projects, and I want to thank you guys so much as always for checking out the channel, checking out the Hanchard Special, and if there's anything that you want to see different, or different angles or footage in future videos on this project or any of the others, please drop down in the comment section and let me know so I can do my best to get that footage for you and explain exactly what's going on. So again, thank you guys so much. Please head down and hit the subscribe button, tell a friend, share on social media, help me grow this channel so I can keep doing bigger and better projects. And as always, thank you so much, and we will catch you guys on the next one.